It's always a good day when another theorist absolutely cooks, and takes a detail that a lot of us had forgotten about or taken aside, and completely breaks open a game with it. And today is that day. Fellow theorist TDreads' schedule theory sounds incredibly boring, but might just crack sister location, and with it, a lot of the timeline wide open. And no, I don't have a cat tree set up yet, but the cats are here now. Say hi. So slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. So what is schedule theory? Well, I'm not going to go over in its entirety here because we are not view stealing, boys. Y'all better go, no, not y'all better, y'all will go click the link and watch TDreads' full video on what schedule theory is and what it means. It's a really interesting theory and I will not be touching on the majority of the details of it in this video. Because like I usually do when I cover somebody's theory, I'm not here to prove or disprove the theory. I'm going to assume the theory is true because it's interesting, I think anyway, to see what the implications of the theory might be if we assume it's right going forward. But just for the purposes of today's video, I will give you a very brief summary of the main points so you're not too lost. In the lead up to the release of Sister Location, Scott Cawthon hid a teaser for the game in the source code of his website. It was a schedule for the animatronics that were going to be featured in the upcoming game. Back then, someone made a spreadsheet to visualize it, and it's right here. At the time, a lot of us just saw that and went, oh, we get some teasers for the names of the animatronics, and left it at that. But TDreads and Cryonide found out that this isn't just some random one-off teaser, but you can one-for-one line up the latter half of this schedule with the full week that we play throughout the course of Sister Location, from available to booked to private party to maintenance. Using that, some of the other source code from the site, some theory crafting and brainstorming, some very well done logic, and making a hypothesis around this sound that plays when Circus Baby opens her keypad. They seemingly proved that Sister Location's animatronics were actively kidnapping children at the private parties they were rented out to. The shocks during the day were done so to make the animatronics more docile and reset them in a way. Otherwise, the sheer amount of remnant inside of them would make them lash out at other people. The final conclusion to all of this was that Sister Location as a whole was a project to put Elizabeth Afton back together, using as much remnant as William Afton could get his hands on. Now, the theory that the Sister Location animatronics were kidnapping children is not new. This is a theory that's been out as long as the games have been. But up until this point, the only evidence we had to suggest this was vibes-based. Like, yeah, the animatronics were built to kidnap children, so they probably did so. There was no good evidence to back this up. And because of that and how much of a mess it makes the timeline, a lot of people assumed that to not be true for that reason. We just didn't have any good evidence. But thanks to that fucking candle, now we do. Again, there is a lot more evidence and theory crafting in that main video, so you really do need to go watch it. But I really wanted to take that theory and see what it would mean about the rest of the timeline if it's assumed to be true. And frankly, I kind of do assume that it's true because it's so well evidenced. Even TDreads mentions some of those implications. The fact that if in Sister Location, a bunch of kids were killed but never really mentioned again, that means one of the main counter-arguments for the DCI, the fact that the victims never appear again, is shot dead in the water. But I specifically want to talk about how this many more victims might affect the timeline after Sister Location. Because if Ennard isn't just the missing child incident victims and Elizabeth, but instead the missing child incident victims, Elizabeth, and like a bunch of other kids, I think this finally gives me a good explanation for one of my theories I've been trying to prove for some time now. So let's do one more look at the creation of the Tangle. We should do a quick refresher very quickly. I know a lot of people are miffed about the current direction of Five Nights at Freddy's, how it's very science fiction forward and not really supernatural, so I figured it's high time to go back and refresh ourselves on some of the earlier parts of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise. The parts that were more supernatural and barely science fiction at all that were made by Scott Cawthon, like Sister Location, this game, Get wrecked, FNAF has always been sci-fi. But self-righteous snark aside, the animatronics of Sister Location carry throughout multiple FNAF games, and it can be a little confusing to follow that line, especially if you're not up to date with all of the evidence and arguing based around those animatronics. In Sister Location, the animatronics are very unstable, and by the end of the game, they have all shed their exoskeletons and form into one mass conglomerate, Ennard. This thing is made up of all of the endoskeletons of every other Funtime animatronic: Circus Baby, Ballora, Funtime Freddy, and Funtime Foxy. Once they form into this creature, they trick Michael into the scooping room, scoop out his inside so they can wear him like a reverse springlock suit, and exit the building, finally being able to escape the bunker because they look human. And this plan works, and they keep living in Michael for some amount of time until Michael Afton's body starts to rot, and they need to make a break for the sewers and escape. Now, Michael Afton should be dead here, but for whatever reason, like every other human in this franchise,
and you're supposed to be dead.
I got better?
he just kind of dusts himself off. Now, that's pretty straightforward. As weird as that is just the plot of Sister Location. There's very little theory crafting going on yet. The big question is,
How does this
I'll make a cup of coffee.
turn into this?
Cut my life into pieces!
we get the answer to this once again in the source code to a Scott website. Actually, 2 websites. In the lead up to FNAF 6, we got a conversation between the source codes of scottgames.com and fnafworld.com. The conversation reads as follows.
You are crowding us. Be quiet. You can't tell us what to do anymore. Yes, I can. You will do everything that I tell you to do. We outnumber you. That doesn't matter, dummy. We found a way to eject you. You would be lost without me. Ha! Say bye to our friend.
So this leads most people, and myself included, to assume that at some point, Elizabeth Afton, or Circus Baby, was kicked out of the rest of Ennard due to either her loyalty to Afton or just generally being insufferable. So when Circus Baby is ejected, she forms into Scrap Baby, and the remainder of Ennard forms into Molten Freddy. We then see both of them in FNAF 6, and they're both burned away for good forever, right?
Now I have a choice.
Okay, but that's the physical timeline of these robots, something that's fairly self-explanatory and doesn't require that much speculation. The huge question comes into the spiritual timeline of these robots. Well, for the longest time, and to an extent still, I believe in Molten MCI, the idea that this creature is made up of the souls of the missing child incident victims, or at least their remnant. But how would that work? Well, it's a theory that most people work backwards from, as most of the evidence for it comes at the end of its timeline. In FNAF 6, we get this image for completing the Lorekeeper ending, which shows 4 named tombstones and 2 hidden ones. The hidden ones are very hotly debated. Is it Charlie, the Crying Child, Elizabeth, Cassidy, the Vengeful Spirit, Andrew? Who knows? I have my own thoughts, particularly Charlie and Cassidy, but that's saved for another day. That's not really important for this theory. Right now, I want to focus on these tombstones, the named ones. These are, at this point, relatively confirmed to be the missing child incident victims' names. Not only do the tombstones line up nearly perfectly with the animatronic masks at the end of FNAF 3, the fact that it's 4 random names, and the context of the game, but since FNAF 6, we've gotten confirmations of these names being the missing child incident names over and over again. In the week before, Ralph sings Happy Birthday to Chica, and when he gets to the name, he feels compelled to say Susie. When he does, Chica goes on a rampage. Also in the week before, Brown and Light tells Raph, and this is a direct quote from the books, Jeremy got me. I mean, Bonnie. Sorry about that mess. Which is possibly as direct as we have ever gotten, and that Jeremy line is backed up in the games themselves. In Help Wanted 2, when you collect the Bonnie memory poppet, you get the achievement, Remember Jeremy. And most recently, in Dead by Daylight of all places, we got confirmation of the name Gabriel. Springtrap is a killer in that game, and in that game you can have add-ons to affect your main ability. One of Springtrap's add-ons is Freddy's Hat, which has the flavor text, Gabriel trusted the wrong grown-up. Now he is the star of the show. Which is crazy that this direct of a lore drop isn't Dead by Daylight. Regardless, 3 of these names are basically confirmed, which means that the 4th one, Fritz, is almost guaranteed to be Foxy. So I think it's safe to assume that's so, but who knows, maybe we'll get direct information soon. There's a rumor that Foxy is going to be a skin for the animatronic in Dead by Daylight, and if they give him a custom bio, there's a non-zero chance that Dead by Daylight is going to confirm Gabriel is Freddy and Fritz is Foxy before any official FNAF media does, which again is crazy. So we know that completing FNAF 6 allows the missing child incident victims to find peace and rest, which implies they were in the fire. So if they were present at FNAF 6, well, who were they? Obviously they're not Cassette Man or the player, and of the 4 main antagonist animatronics, 3 of them have quite obvious identities. Scraptrap is a fan name. This animatronic is characterized and credited as William Afton. Lefty, although immediately a little more obscure, thanks to its blueprints and this rare screen you can get, we fairly clearly know this thing was created to capture the marionette and currently has it inside of it. So that's Charlie. Scrap Baby is just broken up Circus Baby, so likely it's Elizabeth Afton, especially since we got that conversation between Circus Baby and someone else, where Circus Baby was kicked out of Ennard. Meanwhile, the only animatronic left, Molten Freddy, is an amalgamation that speaks in multiple voices. This isn't rocket science. If we have a group of souls left over, they're in Molten Freddy. But like I said when I started this tirade, the evidence that the missing child incident victims are in Molten Freddy is strongest at the end of the timeline. It gets funky the further back up you go. Molten Freddy and Scrap Baby likely formed out of Ennard based off that conversation, which means that the MCI victim remnant must have been within Ennard to split off into Molten Freddy, which means that at some point the missing child incident victims remnant must have been injected into the Funtimes as they make up the components of Ennard. That's all fairly self-explanatory, but it becomes a hot button debate when deciding when and how the missing child incident victims remnant ends up inside the Funtime Animatronics. Now again, I have my own thoughts on that, but it doesn't really matter for today's theory. The evidence we have suggests that the MCI victims remnant is inside of the Funtimes to go into Ennard to go into Molten Freddy. That's all fairly self-explanatory, but there's always one part of this equation that confused me. If the whole point of FNAF 6 is burning down these animatronics so the souls inside of them can find rest, and Molten Freddy, something that is likely made up of the missing child incident victims, also finds rest because of these tombstones, why is it that some 30 years later, there's still a massive amalgamation of wires with a Freddy mask roaming around that same building? It's like it wasn't melted down at all and it never found rest, but according to these tombstones, it should have, right? That's where I think schedule theory can come in. Schedule theory is positing that an unknown number of victims also had their remnant added to the Funtimes. These children were kidnapped, killed, and their remnant was harvested by William Afton. Oh, all done? I know you're a big baby. Oh, you want me to hold you different? Is this better? Oh, that's better. But now that people can't see your cute face, that's okay. In fact, the Funtimes had so much remnant inside them that they had to be routinely electrocuted to stay docile. If all of that remnant ended up in Molten Freddy, FNAF 6 actually backs this up. There's a bit of removed blueprints from the game. Now, using cut content is always tricky business, but I think this content was removed from the game because it frankly almost gives too much away. And those are the blueprints for Molten Freddy, or at least notes taken by likely Henry about Molten Freddy. It reads as follows. Facial recognition file 0072. Security tags active 001. Funtime Freddy 002. Funtime Foxy 003. Ballora. Priority 1. With the most amount of remnant collectively in its structure, this amalgamation of Afton's constructs is a necessary element of paragraph 4. Now, if you're working off of just the framework of Molten MCI, this paragraph still makes sense. If there are 4 different spirits inside this Molten Freddy amalgamation, it would have the most remnant. But with schedule theory, this paragraph becomes a lot more severe. This thing is chock full of remnant, so much it can barely contain itself as one thing. It's falling apart at the seams, it has so much remnant and so many souls inside of it. But again, why does that matter? If the FNAF 6 fire burned away everything and let all these people find peace, shouldn't the remnant of Molten Freddy be the same? Well, let's look again at why we think that. The same game gives us these blueprints of the scooper, which have the line, "There is a possibility that overheating might neutralize the effects permanently." The effects of Remnant. But note the phrasing here, might neutralize. Afton is not an expert and is still learning the science of Remnant. This is a hypothesis he has. But again, I'm not trying to say that the fire didn't work at all. We know where every character in FNAF 6 ends up after it. Several of the named characters are tombstones after FNAF 6. We have Ultimate Custom Night showing us where Afton ends up. We have FNAF World showing us that the crying child was collected and put back together. We know where every named victim ends up after FNAF 6. Every named victim. Heat may assist in neutralizing Remnant, but it's not a cure-all. And this is where Alone Together once again proves to be one of the most instructional books we've ever gotten in Five Nights at Freddy's. Alone Together follows the story of a young boy who doesn't know he's a spirit until he finds his own body. But his grandmother, also a ghost, informs him of how ghosts seem to work in this world. That they're unable to move on because they don't have their memories unless their body is found, either by somebody else or by themselves. If their body goes undiscovered, they might not even know they're dead. Now, every other spirit in FNAF 6 knows where its body is. Elizabeth's was put inside of Circus Baby. William Afton is his own corpse. Charlie's body was never missing. It was left in the street. And the missing child incident victims, I believe, were shown their bodies by Charlotte, so they know theirs as well. But the sister location victims, these children that were kidnapped at private parties, they're never offered such grace. We never hear about them. We never learn their names, never see what happened to them. We never even hear from the families looking for them. As far as they matter, they existed, they lived, and according to everyone who knew them, one day they disappeared. Heat can't fix that atrocity. Heat can't give them their memories back. And as is well established in Five Nights at Freddy's, if you don't have your memories as a spirit, you can't move on. You're stuck in this plane. So after FNAF 6 burns, and the humans and animatronics inside die and are laid to rest and can finally find peace, they are the only ones who can. Ones that either Henry didn't know about or assumed would also be laid to rest are left behind. Their bodies are long gone. The only one who ever saw them die was William Afton, likely the one overseeing their extermination. Those countless souls are still trapped down there, haunting the building itself, trying to find a way out so they can go back to the places they were when they were alive, coalescing, forming together, using any scrap of material left behind, forming a larger and larger mass of wires and endoskeletons into one central being, the Tangle. And one day, when their prison is shattering around them and they might finally escape, they run into something that looks familiar. A rabbit, a yellow rabbit, one that has the spirit or energy or maybe just likeness of the man who killed them. They grab him and escape, and the Tangle is a loose end that maybe in an upcoming game we'll have to deal with, and hopefully help find peace. How? I don't know. My best guess is in some way affecting their memories so they can find peace. Maybe that comes down to going into them ourselves. Maybe that comes to going to the old sister location bunker and finding their remains. Whatever the answer is, something needs to be done about it. So yes, the Tangle might not be the missing child incident victims, but I think it might be comprised of all of the victims of Circus Baby's entertainment and rental. Every other unnamed victim in this franchise. The forgotten ones, the ones that were denied existing at all by much of this fanbase, including myself up until this most recent theory. So from now on, I think I might call this thing the Forgotten Tangle, for Aura alone. And again, go and watch TDreads' Schedule Theory. It's a good video. And if you have watched it and you're looking for something else to watch, if I did my job correctly, right here should be my playthrough of Secret of the Mimic at 0% brightness over on RyeToast. It was live streamed over at Twitch at twitch.tv/RyeToastYT, where I stream 4 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday at 9 p.m. EST. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share it with #ToastArt. A huge shout out to the best channel members, the Dough Risers. Until next time, as always, stay toasty, slices.